Great. Yeah, it was perfect.
Like including the making ooze a 5/5 and then passing, so that they would offer the trade, which of course Jackson's not going to go for at that point.
Okay.
So,
Wow, and
You trade.
Ichikawa drew the card. Yeah, Connie was like, if I'd passed, would you have just made the trade?
yeah. And I think Ichikawa may have made the trade if he just passed. I mean, he was very clearly thinking about Celestial Charm the entire time that game, including not pumping the oozes earlier, all that sort of stuff.
Wow. Yeah, let's take a look at Golgari Charm. I think we have yeah, just not a card. I think was this a card on your mind as you were coming into the event?
Well, I mean, we had it in a bunch of different decks because it's just very powerful. Basically, all the charms, as long as like 2 of their modes are good and 1 is decent, they're going to see some play. Just because they're so flexible and they only cost 2 mana. And as we saw here, Golgari Charm used in a way that it's not normally used, but still very, very good.
Yeah, we're going to really see. I think Yuuki Ichikawa's got to get used to the idea that he's probably going to be asked to sign Golgari Charms at events for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, yeah.
So, this is, well positioned against blue-white control decks featuring Supreme Verdict and Detention Sphere. That's again, we talked about that idea of the Ajani's presence in Jackson Cunningham's deck.
Yeah, and Golgari Charm, especially out of like Jund monsters, for example, that's where it really shines. They try to contend your planeswalkers with Detention Sphere and you just kill it. They try to kill your whole team with Supreme Verdict and you just regenerate. But it also, does double duty against aggro, killing a bunch of 1/1s. So the fact that all the modes are useful in different matchups means that generally is a card you want in your deck against most of the field.
Good against goblins, good against monsters.
Yeah, when you have a card that's good against goblins and blue-white, I mean, that's a good card. You do side it out sometimes because sometimes the modes just are a little lackluster, but in general, it's the perfect kind of main deck card.
Okay, one of the other big cards that was loomed over that entire match and which ended up making Golgari Charm so good was Selesnya Charm. So let's talk a little bit about that card. There you see it. You talked about it during the match that it just all 3 things that it does very well and does very well in the decks that really want it to be in there.
Yeah, and for the aggressive decks like Naya or Green-White, the exiling 5-power creature I think is the best mode because it's a 2-mana removal spell against cards that would otherwise, present you with a problem like Desecration Demon. But the fact that it's also a 2-drop, your weakest 2-drop if you're casting it as a 2-drop, but you have the option. And then it's a pump spell when they make, a block like we saw that where, +2/+2 and trample is good. The fact that it's a removal spell, a creature, and a pump spell, like all in one card, again, that's just very efficient, very flexible, and that's kind of what the charms do.
Right, and getting Obsidat.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
I mean, that's really nice. There are not a lot of instant speed ways to get an Obsidat.
Yeah, I mean,
especially in a green-white deck.
It even gets like, Advent of the Worm out of the mirror. Like it does a lot of what you want, to do. And an aggressive deck can't usually afford to just play a straight-up removal spell, right? Like these decks don't have Banishing Light or Busy Mortars in their main deck very often. But because Celestia Charm is also a creature, you just get to kind of like free roll the creature on top of a removal spell.
Right. So if you were ranking the whole cycle of charms in terms of their impact on constructed, where does Selesnya Charm sit for you?
I think the top 3 contenders right now are Azorius Charm, Celestia Charm, and Golgari Charm. And I think Azorius and Celestia are the top 2. So I would say actually right now Celestia Charm might be better than Azorius Charm. I mean, Supreme Verdict decks are, Ivan Flox, the last remaining member, left in the tournament. They're still good decks, but I think Celestia Charm might have a slight edge. There are more Celestia Charms than Azorius Charms, than any charm actually in the top 8 right now.
I'm surprised to not hear Boros Charm put on the short list.
I think Boros Charm is good, and we actually see 8 Boros Charms in the top 8 as well. But Boros Charm is a little more focused. It's a little less versatile. Whereas like Matt Sperling's deck, is just using it to do 4 to the face. Pat Cox's deck was just basically using it to do double strike, sometimes indestructible. So I think that Azorius Charm and Celestia Charm are just so much more flexible, even though all the cards are very powerful.
Okay. Well, we are ready for a Game 3 here between Yuuki Ichikawa and Jackson Cunningham. So let's go back to the table and watch these guys determine who will advance to the semifinals here today. Experiment 1 is on the play for Jackson Cunningham.
which is a pretty optimal start. I mean, Experiment 1 is your best one-drop, and especially after board, when you've sided most of them out, still having a one-drop is really good.
The always pious Yuuki Ichikawa goes to the temple again for the third straight game on turn 1.
And this is a great hand for Cunningham. Just curving Experiment 1 into double Fleecebane line or voice Fleecebane line is very, very good.
What do you go with turn 2?
I like the line. You just want to attack.
Okay.
And because if you had, let's say, one voice, one line, I think it'd be a lot harder because you want to grow Experiment 1 from a 2-2 to a 3-3.
Right.
But since you have, well, now 3 Fleecebane lines, you just play line on turn 2, play line on turn 3. Especially since you don't have Bile-Blight to worry about. We saw Pat get completely annihilated by Owen's Bile-Blight in the quarters, and you know that's not going to happen here.
That was actually sickening.
Yeah. I mean that.
Okay, here comes a Thoughtseize. He's not going to like what he sees.
But he's going to have to see something.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've actually found in our testing that Thoughtseize is surprisingly good against the aggro decks. The aggro decks are trying to combine cards a little more than they used to. You don't want it against like red aggro because all their cards are the same, you know, and of pretty low power level. I mean, I know I was playing the red deck in this tournament, but against like the Naya deck and the green-white deck, they actually have a pretty decent variation of power level between their cards, and they're trying to combine cards, like combine a Johnny with, you know, Smiter or something like that, and being able to break up combos is pretty nice. Yeah. In this case, Thoughtseize does generally fight well against Experiment 1, but Cunningham just drew a very redundant hand here, so that is not the case. Having Elvish Mystic here is pretty important, though.
We're looking at a turn 4 Nissa right now.
Dreadbore,
Dreadbore something, turn 4 Nissa, make a 4/4 creature.
Which is decent, but this is a pretty good start on the play for Cunningham. That Experiment 1 probably not going to a 4/4 here. Well, I assume that'll... or not. Well.
Oh, yeah. That's actually... right.
Sorry.
There we go. Easy mistake to make. So Dreadbore can't kill Experiment 1 here because it has now 2 counters, but just eating a Fleecebane line is pretty good. And Experiment 1 isn't going to grow to a 4/4 all that often in the deck. I mean, it clearly can, but it's not the sort of thing that happens on turn 4 all the time. Ichikawa might be getting close to chump block mode here. Even if he kills one of the lions here, he's taking 6 going down to 2. I mean, that's pretty tough. Having the Elvish Mystic not come out till turn 2 and having Cunningham basically play a 3/3 on turn 1, 2, and 3 makes this game very, very difficult to win.
And his Nissa creature...
Nissa doesn't untap the land,
right,
so
exactly.
he needs to have he needs both Elvish Mystics to survive in order to play an untapped, to make Nissa, you know, make a 4/4 off an untapped creature. But if you Dreadbore, go to 2 and then make Nissa, you actually just die. So Ichikawa's gonna need a different sequence of plays to survive this game. And if you chump and you stay at 5, then next turn you still aren't able to Nissa and stay alive. And I think that was an Advent, which an Advent should just about seal the deal here. Just because Ichikawa's going to have trouble beating the board already, and that Advent is just going to make it so, you know, Jackson just basically can't lose here unless something very strange happens.
Would you consider an Advent to drop him to 1?
It's not necessarily great here because all the creatures are still lethal. I think exposing Advent to like Dreadbore is not really what you want to do, and Ichikawa gets to plan around it. Of course, it's not actually coming up here since Ichikawa is choosing to correctly block Experiment 1 instead of Fleecebane line, but it would be something to consider if it was not blocked.
Okay. That's right. Yeah.
Even though 2 top 8s out of 4 Pro Tours is amazing, Ichikawa may have to wait a little longer before hosting the title at the end. But Ichikawa's not dead here because he can ultimate price the Advent token, but he is definitely in trouble. He's actually... This is a kind of awkward spot, too, for Corsair, since if he wants to be able to make a land drop off the top of his library, he still wants to leave black untapped in order to cast ultimate price. So he has to decide whether he wants to tap Mystic or just play his Forest first and then just play Corsair off that, which definitely represents that he's got Abrupt Decay or Ultimate Price. One thing that may make his decision a little easier is that the 1 life going from 5 to 6 doesn't actually change the clock here. Though it could change it next turn if you block and go down to 3 and then go up to 4. So
right. You stay out ahead of one creature.
One disadvantage of a 3-color deck, though, is that let's say Ichikawa does play Courser before playing a land drop. There aren't that many untapped, painless lands that he can play off the top of his deck.
We may just well see him play that forest out of his hand no matter what, right?
Yeah. Though, I mean, this is the slightly riskier play, but when you're behind, you should make riskier plays. This also telegraphs less because you're not making it as obvious that you have a 2-mana spell.
Right.
Not that Cunningham's really going to do anything but play the worm token here.
Yeah.
So Ichikawa, if Cunningham plays no other spells this game, or for at least like the next 2 or 3 turns, Ichikawa can ultimate price the worm, block the Fleece Mane, but that requires Cunningham to also not have a 5th land. So it's kind of hard to put him on no spells, no lands. And none of the green-white lands come into play tapped. So this is a tough spot. Courser is likely going to have to chump this turn. And that's going to make this a hard game to win, because Experiment 1 is going to evolve off the worm token.
Right. So he says go.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Ichikawa can't play around anything anymore. He can't play around a Johnny's Presence. He can't play around Celestia Charm. He just has to hope nothing happens at any point in the game. The land there is pretty relevant. I mean, it makes the Lion into something that cannot be blocked by Courser. So now Courser has to just get thrown away. Ichikawa's drawing a Sylvan Caryatid. He's going to have just a Nissan hand with 5 mana. He's basically going to be in Abyss mode very, very quickly here, at which point it's going to be hard to come back.
Yeah. Everyone comes in.
I mean, Ichikawa's even got the uncomfortable situation of blocking the line and forcing at least Cunningham to tap out, which means nothing new is coming into play, but you're still facing down 2 lethal 4/4s, one of which is
indestructible and hexproof. Yeah, it's just not good.
Ichikawa was in a pretty tight spot last game, and he maneuvered very well to get out of it, but this game's going to be a little tougher. He doesn't have an ooze in play generating an advantage. He's got less that's kind of going to bring him back in the game if something happens.
Right, and we know his top card is not very impactful.
Courser is kind of a spoiler there.
Yeah.
It does show you your future. Jackson, of course, can just pass here. He doesn't have to Monstrous the Lion because he's got lethal, coming in.
And as soon as Ichikawa commits...
Yeah, as soon as Ichikawa ultimate prices, you'd gladly pay 5 mana to kill a Courser of Krufix.
Yeah. I would pay to kill a Courser of Krufix that wasn't even in a game I was playing.
Yeah.
There's the ultimate price. There's the Monstrous.
Take it over 4.
So Ichikawa's next turn, I guess, is play Sylvan Caryatid, chump,
Go.
followed by draw a card and extend the hand. Is my prediction for how these next 2 turns are going to play out. There's a possibility Ichikawa skips the intervening phase.
Right.
And just, goes straight for the handshake. But, no reason to do that. You might as well play out. Jackson playing a voice first, just in case, make it more sure you don't have any tricks.
Couple of Pro Tour winning creatures go into the red zone.
Yeah, damage.
And, Jackson just piles on. There we go. Jackson Cunningham advances to the semifinals in his first Pro Tour.
He's undefeated in top 8 matches.
Yes. There you see Jeff Cunningham, his older brother, come over to slap him on the back, literally. But, Ichikawa is someone we're going to just be talking about for a while. 2 Pro Tour top 8s and 4 tries.
Yeah, 2 Pro Tours from now when he has his 3rd Pro Tour top 8 and 6.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Just super impressive to watch. That play in game 2 is going to be one of my highlights from this event.
Yeah, that was a very good
go
play.
back to. It was great too. He even hid the card from us.
Yeah.
He did an excellent job. He just drew it, played it there. It's just wonderful. So we got one more quarterfinal match to bring you. We're getting set up for that. In the meantime, we're going to throw it back to the news desk, and they'll tell you all about it.
We will indeed. Thanks very much to Brian David Marshall and Louis Scott Vargas, BDMLSV. Great stuff. One more quarterfinal to come. I'm here with Zach Hill. Zach, we hype the big moments in Pro Tour coverage, but quite genuinely, there was a really, really cool play in that quarterfinal there featuring Golgari Charm.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Ichikawa pumps his Scavenging Ooze to 5/5 to trade with a Worm. Cunningham, really excited, gets to turn on his Celestia Charm, deal 5 damage. Golgari Charm, not the most oftenly used mode of shrinking your own creatures to counter spell removal, and then, of course, Ooze growing again to take out the Worm. I mean, really just unbelievable play to get, force a third game, but Cunningham taking it in the end.
Yeah, now at the start of this match, it looked like people voting in the poll that you can check out along the Twitter, the feed along bottom of the screen. A lot of people were voting for Ichikawa, felt that Jund Planeswalkers was pretty heavily favored, but really, even despite that sort of heroic play with a Golgari Charm, kind of felt like Cunningham was in control for most of that match.
Yeah, I mean, being on the play in the third game, normally in a mid-range fight, the kind of mid-rangier deck has the advantage, but that green-white deck can get some blistering fast starts, and that's what we saw. I mean, Ichikawa had plays like every turn of the game, they just weren't enough.
All right, so Jackson Cunningham through to the semi-final, but we don't know who he plays. That's what we find out next. Our fourth and final quarterfinal is William Jensen against Pierre-Christophe Mondon. So it's all US in this final one. It's black-white mid-range against Jund Planeswalkers. Why don't we find out a little bit more about William Jensen? We'll show you what his career is. He is on the Pantheon. Definitely the most successful team in the last 12 to 18 months. He's 32, close to $150,000. That will go past that number as a result of today. Closing in, indeed, next time we update it, he will be over 300 lifetime pro points. This is his 5th Pro Tour top 8, the champion of teams at Pro Tour Boston more than a decade ago. He has 3 Grand Prix titles, 8 Grand Prix top 8s this season. He has much to smile about, and he cannot wait to get his quarterfinal started. Let's see how he made it into the top 8, and there you see he was the dominant story of day one. Andrus, Sam Tharmarat, and Daniel Hansen fell in draft. Then Jensen unleashed his black-white mid-range deck. Sundstrom, Cunningham, Dominguez, Muller, and Shinin. And don't forget, Jackson Cunningham awaits the rematch in the semi-final if William Jensen can get there. Back we come on day 2. Jesse, Turtenwald, Sperling go down in draft. Then we have Friedman, the loss, Suchinko win, and then it gets a little bit nervous, even though he only needs to just shake hands with someone. Pat Cox says, I can't, beats him. Ichikawa says, in Japanese, I can't, beats him. And then Ivan Flock in the last says, yes, let's have the handshake. Let's both potentially meet again. They're on opposite sides of the bracket. That could yet be your final. So what about his deck then? It's black-white mid-range. Let's take a look. Zach, what are we looking at here?
I mean, we're seeing a deck that most of Team CFB Pantheon ended up playing. It's a black-white mid-range deck, but what it really, its roots are in the mono-black mid-range control deck that's been dominating so much of the standard season. See a lot of the cards that define that archetype here: Thoughtseize, Pack Rat, Hero's Downfall, Underworld Connections, Desecration Demon. What you gain from white are big threats like Blood Baron of Vizcapa, Obsidian, Ghost Council, and of course the card that really defined a lot of the last Pro Tour, Elspeth, Sun's Champion.
Yeah, she's a fabulous, fabulous lady and a fabulous, fabulous card too. All right, now we have a teammate and friend of William Jensen waiting to talk to Marshall Sutcliffe. So without further ado, let's send you over to Marshall. He's with the fabulous Matt Costa.
Hey guys, I've got Matt Costa with me here. Now, Matt, you tested with Huey leading up to the event. Give us a picture of sort of the bigger picture of what the testing looks like for the PT. I know you guys come in a bit early.
Yeah, so about 11 or 12 days before the PT on a Monday, there's 9 or 10 of us that show up at the airport and go to a huge house that we've rented. And basically, from then on, we play Magic 24/7. The rest of the team, most of them arrive about a week later. You know, the people who have commitments and, you know, can't spend all the time there, but basically we wake up in the morning, 8 or 9 a.m., we play Magic, we eat, we play Magic, we play Magic, we eat, we go to bed. And that's
Is
the
that
day.
really how, like, is that the goal, or is that, you know what I mean? Like, does that actually happen, or is there like video games and pizza and, you know, what does anything get in the way, or are you guys pretty regimented?
We play a lot of Magic.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so now let's focus in a little bit more on Huey specifically. So he's on the list that, did all of you guys play this black-white deck?
Most of us played it.
Okay.
Andrew Cunio and Jelger Wiegersma played blue-white control, and a couple people played a slightly different black-white deck. But for the most part, we all played the same deck.
Okay, so you guys all know this deck inside and out then,
Yeah.
as far as constructed goes. What would you say Huey's confidence level is going into his quarterfinal match here?
I mean, I'd say he's extremely confident. You know, he's one of the all-time greats. Whether, you know, he might be a little bit modest about that, but we all know it. And we think we have a great deck. And you know, the Jund matchup is something that we prepared for before the tournament and prepared for last night.
What's his demeanor for testing, Huey? Is he very rigid, you know, sort of straightforward tester, or does he like to mix it up and have some fun, experiment with stuff? Like, what's his general vibe when you guys are working through your work cycle?
I mean, experimenting is really important. You know, if you play a lot of games doing the same thing, you don't really learn that much. And, you know, we didn't have a ton of time. We had a few hours last night and a few hours this morning. So he tried some different things, decided what he thought the best way to approach it was, and that's what he's going with right about now.
So once he makes the top 8, talk to us about what happens from the team's perspective, from you, the rest of the people that support him. I mean, is it a situation where he runs home and goes to bed? Does he start shuffling up and start trying out sideboard options? How does that work?
You know, you got to balance the two. There's no substitute for a good night's sleep before the tournament and being in a good mental state. But last night, you know, we had a quick dinner, and myself and Reed and Owen and Huey played their respective quarterfinals matchups for maybe an hour, hour and a half, and then we let them get to bed.
He's certainly lucky to have such good teammates, and we'll see if that luck pays off. Let's head back over to the news desk where Rich Hagan awaits.
Thanks very much, Marshall. One black-white mid-range deck is already through to the semi-finals. That's Owen Turtenwald. Now William Jensen tries to make it 2. One Jund Planeswalkers deck is already out of the semi-finals. That's Yuuki Ichikawa. Now Pierre Mondon tries to take his Jund Planeswalkers into the semi-finals. Black-white, Jund Planeswalkers, Jensen Mondon, the 4th quarterfinal right now.